The first episode of the Doom Patrol is basically like a long origin story, and it is sufficiently weird and strange, which is appropriate for the Doom Patrol. I liked it. I thought it was kind of sort of okay though, because, well, I guess it was good. It wasn't that action packed, but I guess that wasn't the point. I was emotionally engaged and involved in the character, and I want to see where things go next. So I give it the thumbs up. But given the awesome reviews I'd heard of this show before, I was expecting it to be like spectacularly good, and I thought it was just okay good. But again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is bad at all. It's fine. I mean, I thought it was decent, and of course, I'm going to keep watching the show. And I'm not going to say what happens exactly because this is not... Well, my reviews do have spoilers, but I don't want to have this be a plot summary. But basically, it does end, with a cliffhanger to the next episode because I think that they're about to fight their first villain, Mr. Nobody. As he shows up here, played by Alan Tudyk or Tudyk. I don't know how to say his last name. But this episode's primary job was to introduce us to the Doom Patrol and their powers and who they are as people. And then, right at the last, 15 minutes, the bad guy shows up. And we already got a little bit of him in the beginning, as you saw. And, next week is going to be, the action stuff. And probably more character development. But, I thought it was very interesting how, they definitely follow the comics. They're faithful, but they do take some liberties with the origins. For example, with Robot Man, in this origin, his tragic accident that scars his life and, ruins his body is he's on the street driving with his family and gets into an accident. That's different from the comics. In the comics, it actually was a race car driving accident while he was on the road. It didn't have anything to do with his wife distracting him, though. I don't think Robot Man never had a wife or a daughter in the comics that I remember reading at all. They added that for the show, unless I missed that issue. But he was always, I think, a single man. A single successful race car driver at the time he had an accident. And that destroyed his body. But in the show, they added, I think, the wife and the daughter, just to give him some additional elements to traumatize him. And his daughter might actually be alive, as Jane said. The Chief lied to him, I guess, to protect him, which is a lot like the Chief in the comics. I wonder, so far the Chief seems like a well-meaning, nice guy with secrets, though, on the show. So I'm wondering if they'll take him down the darker path that he went down in the comics, because in the comics, they made the Chief kind of a villain. And in this show, the Chief doesn't really seem like he's that kind of guy. Maybe not yet, though. Maybe they will eventually make him like that. But he seems very well-meaning and compassionate here. Unlike, he wound up being in the comics. So we'll see what's going on with the Chief later on. As we will with all of them. And also, they gave Negative Man, I think, a wife and sons, too, in the past, too. Larry Trainor in the comics, he wasn't married and he didn't have sons either. If those are his biological sons, they could be stepsons in the show. And they made him, gay in the show. And he is not gay in the comics at all. In fact, Negative Man never really had much of a love life or love interest that was shown on panel in the comic. I mean, in the 60s comic... Well, part of it's because, he's a radioactive being, so it was hard for him to have, a physical relationship. But even when they would talk about his past as a regular man, he was never shown to have a girlfriend or a wife or anything, or a boyfriend. It was assumed he was straight, though. I don't think that him being homosexual is anything that was in the comics. I think they made that up for the show. And I think it's to reflect, Matt Bomer, the actor playing him, is gay in real life. So I think they wanted to just add that element to the character and that he would play this. I mean, there was a time when Larry Trainor in the comics, when he was Rebus, and he was kind of bonded with a woman and stuff, and intersexed. He did, have some sort of romantic sexual stuff going on there. But it was all as a straight man would have sexual relations, right? Or a trans person. I don't think he's ever been gay until now on this show. And I thought that and another difference is the characterization of Rita. Rita seems a lot like she had a much colder and meaner edge in this show. And then in the comics, I mean, in the comics, Rita can definitely be, rough, but not in the way she is on this show. The Rita on this show seems, she's cold towards people, that guy, because he has part of his arms missing. She was never like that in the comics that I read. She was just, she was just an ambitious actress, but she was never shown, I think, to be kind of cruel in that way that she is on the show. And also her inability to control her powers. she wasn't like that in the 60s comics at all. I mean, she had problems controlling them, but it wasn't, she wasn't turning into blobs and stuff. She would just stretch her skin and grow tall or small. And she could always hold her body for the most part. She never had a problem looking like a regular woman. They didn't give her significant problems being able to do that until decades later. So they kept that element of the character for the show because, it adds more drama and tension, possibly. I mean, that is why they did it for the show. And also the effects of her blobbiness, they look good for a TV show. But I do wonder in like 10 or 15 years, if they'll hold up that well. Because there's a lot of stuff that looks fine, during while it's on. But as time goes by, it's kind of like, they look really, really bad. And they look okay just now on the show. So I'm wondering, in a decade or two, will it be like, man, those blob effects are horrible. But, I think they're doing good with the budget they have. I mean, the show doesn't look bad. It looks great. I mean, and it's engaging. And I want to see more of it. And, Jane, has 64 personalities in the show like she does in the comics. But, she does seem younger on the show than she always seemed in the comics. She always seemed kind of like an older woman, a bit older than she does here. And the origins of how she got her superpowers in the comics had to do with, like, the invasion event and, like, a gene bomb. And in the show, I don't think that's the origin they're going with for how she got her powers. We'll see. Because then they'd have to introduce the Dominators and space stuff, and I think that might be, just too much. Too convoluted for a show. They might want to keep it simple when they're just introducing these people. So, I'm interested to see how they'll talk about how she got her superpowers. She got her personalities because she was abused, sexually as a child in the comics. And they might reflect that in the show. I don't know. I mean, we've seen that DC Universe, they aren't, shying away from, sexual assault as like a plot device or origin. Because they did that with Hawk in, the Hawk and Dove episodes on on Titans. So they aren't afraid to go there if they have to for Doom Patrol. But all in all, a very interesting episode. I'm here. It was a slow burn. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. This episode was a slow burn. Not bad, but just a bit, a slow burn. This is an episode that took its time. As you could say it should, because, we need to know these people before we care about what happens to them in bad situations, right? And, mission accomplished. I recommend it. Hope you enjoy it too. And I will be here next week talking about episode 2. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.